Hello there and welcome. In this video I got you 10 tips and tricks around the high culture in Age of Wonders 4. We're going to talk about all the little things that are hidden in the culture, and I hope that by the end of this video there were one or two things at least that were helpful for you. The more the better, obviously. So let's get started with number one. The high culture has integrated basically three different playstyles. Their alignment agenda has three different bonuses that they achieve when they have three different alignment purities, so to speak. So you can either go for a tall building style where you have very powerful cities with pure good. Neutral is a very expansionistic playstyle, whereas evil is a very conquest-based playstyle. The point that I personally dislike about it, though, is that only pure good and pure evil are really easy to maintain. The pure neutral part is really cool to let your cities grow if they are stable, but on the other hand, it is also very hard to maintain that because the game doesn't offer you in equal portions good and evil decisions. So if you want to go for the neutral path, it might be the hardest, but also the one that I personally think has the best impact on your empire development. So these are those things that I think at the beginning of the game it pays out a lot to decide at least in which direction of the pendulum you want to swing, because the bonuses are pretty nice. Number two, you have one of the best early game damage profiles in the entire game, and that comes from the Awakening skill. So Awakening does give you a +3 on spirit damage, and basically with small amounts of effort, you have that +3 of damage on everybody. So generally, the damage amounts in the early game are very low numbers. So these guys, without the enchantments that I currently run, would only deal 6 damage. This is a 50% increase per blow. And therefore, your early game damage is really, really majestic. This is something you can strongly utilize, and I really recommend you to do so. Number three, there is a support synergy in this culture integrated. This is due to several reasons. For one, the Sun Priests are one of the most versatile supporters in the game, offering you healing and awakening, and a basic attack which hits quite nicely hard. And once they are awakened, they also have the ability to distract the enemy, which makes them susceptible to flanking attacks. So altogether, this alone is a reason why any support strategy works pretty decently well with these guys, because, like I said, these boys are pretty much must-haves in your army, and you will usually run a couple of these, if not many. There is also the point that this whole awakening theme can be amplified with things like Tome of Warding. This here, for example, is an insane boost, and you can also use this with ritualist heroes that also have skills that trigger on support abilities. One way or another, the high culture, I think, is a very synergistic culture into any support-themed build. Number four, and I already mentioned that on the previous point a little bit, is they also got a really high flanking synergy. And this is integrated and hard-coded basically into their culture, as not only supporters get this distraction ability, but also battle mages. So battle mages can also distract, once they are awakened that is, and since your cultural unit is a tier 3 battle mage, well, you are really good at opening up the enemies to being susceptible to flanking. That, combined with your generally high damage profile, like I said, you hit quite hard, and that quite quickly. Number five, this is a bit of a downside. This is one of the most micromanagement intense cultures to play. This is because Awakening only lasts 3 turns, and it all has to be manually triggered. To add insult to injury, the Twin Awakening skill does not allow you to select the second unit manually. You have to hope that it jumps on over to the guy that you want it on, which I personally really dislike, but, well, it's a price to pay. It is all free actions. It is something that you get kind of used to, but it is basically the price to pay for all that power you got. It ends up in a lot of micromanagement where you spend way more time in the battle, in the active battle, than with other cultures. Number six, this culture has a really nice and balanced roster. From top to bottom, their entire roster has everything you could desire. You got shields, you got spears, you got supporters, you got battle mages, and you have pretty much everything for a decent formation. This is really, really cool, but they also got on their balance a bias towards magic due to their tier 3 battle mage unit, and they also have a slight lack in sturdiness due to the fact that their tier 2 is a spear. They have decent defensive values, but nearly as good as the shield troops, and their only shield troop is a tier 1. On the plus side, the Shield of Light gives them some really tasty extra stats, but they stay tier 1 units, therefore their defense and resistance values will be always lower than the than the stronger units. So therefore, you have generally a slight bias towards backline damage, but you are still featuring one of the most balanced rosters in the game, in my opinion. Number 7 is an interesting little caveat about this culture. You are very susceptible against buff removal in general, because your whole culture falls so flat the moment you don't have that awakened buff going for you. Awakening is more than just damage. It's often unlocking extra abilities, range, conditions, things that you really want to have. And when that all of a sudden gets switched off, you lose a big portion of your damage. This is probably more a tip for playing against high culture than with high culture itself. So whenever you have the issue at hand with a high culture player that really pisses you off, you can easily shut them down with low budget Tome of Enchantment. It's really devastating when you have enough archers, that is, and high budget Tome of Severing, although the disruption is not doing anything against their positive statuses, but this is in the high end of the high culture. You know, I haven't played any high culture builds that didn't rely heavily on unit enchantments, so therefore this is really, really useful in any regard. And there. No. I forgot which ones, but generally every unit that can strip buffs off of the enemy is a very powerful unit against the high culture. Use that in both directions. Number 8, an interesting thing about the high culture, they are really good auto-resolvers. This is because the micromanagement intense playstyle of the high culture doesn't bother the AI at all. It is very proficient at spreading the awakening buffs over your entire team, and that gives you an innate advantage over the AI. Give these guys a bit of a nuking power, and a couple of the Sun Priests later, they sustain well through the enemy combat because, you know, everybody must be awakened, so they use the healing also. It's pretty smartish. Altogether, I have made the experience that any of my high culture builds was one of those builds that really easily auto-resolved. If that is something you value because you like to play fast, it's a pretty interesting characteristic about this culture. Number 9. You have a very strong knowledge base in your economy when playing high culture, and you should capitalize on that. The thing here is you get to use sunshines when you're playing high culture, and that is a pretty big thing, actually. This bad boy is not only a knowledge producing province that you can, a research post that you can slap down wherever you want, so opening up for new buildings in your city. It is also a synergistic thing with all the other research posts. So that means any area that is eligible for lots of research posts is very, very desirable for this culture. So generally, they love everything which is mana nodes or also pearl reefs. Very, very good environments for the high culture because the more research posts they can gather, the more power they can reap out of these. And this is some interesting synergy because other cultures don't get to do that. Add some other knowledge-based province improvements on top of that, ice magic, for example, or doom depth, the tome of the one with the doom depth trench. That's the I forgot the name, the one with the banshees, but that also features a nice knowledge improver. All these things are especially synergistic on the high culture. Number 10, here are a few tips towards some weaknesses that there are. So the biggest struggle for the high culture is the transition from early game to mid game. This is because your very early game power spike falls off when you are going into the area of the game where more and more tier 3 and tier 4 units appear. Yes, that battle mage of yours is really one nasty, nasty thing. Exposing light is a majestic spell that makes it easier to kill things, but eventually you will notice the squishiness of your units. This is one thing you need to take care of. Usually easily achievable with a couple of units out of the tier 2 regimen. There's Tome of Glades for your help, and Iron Golems could work. There's plenty of options for that, but you should pick something. And the other thing is a little bit more hidden between the lines, a slight lack of production points. You see, you get a little bit less of that than other cultures, and that is something that it doesn't really show in the, or you don't feel it that much. But I noticed that adding in some extra productivity helps this culture tremendously, because otherwise your cities develop a little bit slower than other cultures due to the slight lack of in production points. It's very easy to mitigate if you are aware of it. Just claim a few early provinces that produce production points, like iron deposits or something like that, and you're good. But don't, and you're a little bit too slow for the general way of things. And it's a small thing, but the most important thing is to know that your roster is innately squishy and you need to do something about that. They're fairly robust for the tools that they are worked with, but give them better tools and you have one nigh invincible army. Now, that's been all of the things that I wanted to talk about in this video. I think there's way more to say about the high culture, so you have a few things to add into this video. I'm all ears, and I hope the rest of the community will enjoy as well. Feel free to leave a like, leave a subscribe. Feel free to support Icon Gaming financially via donations, YouTube channel memberships, whatever tickles your fancy. I say thanks for whatever you do, when you do. Many, many thanks. And also, thanks for watching this video up until the very end. Appreciate you taking that time, and I hope you have a great day. See you soon.